In early 2026, U.S. forces seized Russian-flagged oil tankers in the Atlantic, escalating tensions with Venezuela's Maduro regime. Labeling Maduro a narco-terrorist, President Trump deploys a naval blockade in the Caribbean. Russian advisors in Caracas warn of retaliation, while China vows to protect its investments. A U.S. airstrike on Venezuelan ports hits Russian personnel, igniting a proxy clash that draws in global powers. As U.S. support for Ukraine intensifies with advanced weapons, Russia launches Oreshnik missiles at Lviv near NATO borders. Trump authorizes strikes on Russian assets, citing, quote, escalation dominance. A misfired NATO drone downs a Russian jet, invoking Moscow's red lines. Putin deploys North Korean troops en masse, turning the conflict into a multi-front war that spills into Europe. Renewed Iran-Israel clashes erupt after U.S.-backed Israeli strikes on Iranian nuclear sites in mid-2025. Trump greenlights direct U.S. involvement, deploying carriers to the Persian Gulf. Iran retaliates with missiles on U.S. bases, activating Hezbollah and proxies. Russia and China supply Tehran, framing it as resistance to American imperialism, pulling the Middle East into a broader alliance against the West. A massive U.S. cyber attack disrupts Russian grids in response to tanker seizures. Pyongyang, allied with Moscow, launches ballistic tests toward U.S. allies in Asia. Trump orders preemptive strikes on North Korean facilities, but a missile veers toward Japan, triggering Article 5. China sees this as encirclement, mobilizing forces near Taiwan and escalating to a Pacific theater confrontation. U.S. rhetoric shifts to dominating the Western Hemisphere, with calls to annex Greenland from Denmark for strategic minerals. Trump deploys troops amid security concerns, clashing with Russian interests in the Arctic. NATO fractures as Europe protests, but Russia responds with submarine incursions. This northern front merges with Atlantic tensions, globalizing the conflict. U.S. interventions in Sudan and the Sahel to counter Russian Wagner forces lead to direct engagements. Trump frames it as combating global disorder. Iranian-backed militias join the fray, attacking U.S. convoys. China, with economic stakes, deploys peacekeepers that clash with American troops, turning regional civil wars into battlegrounds for superpower rivalries. Emboldened by U.S. actions elsewhere, China blockades Taiwan amid U.S. arms sales. Trump sends carriers to the strait, citing quote, freedom of navigation. A collision sinks a U.S. destroyer, blamed on Beijing. Russia exploits the distraction to advance in Ukraine, while North Korea fires on South Korea. The Indo-Pacific erupts, forcing a two-ocean war that overwhelms U.S. logistics. Miscalculations cascade. A U.S. strike on Iranian facilities prompts Russian nuclear alerts. Trump invokes America First dominance, but alliances like BRICS unify against perceived aggression. Cyber takedowns of U.S. infrastructure follow, leading to tactical nukes in Ukraine. The world crosses the threshold. WW3 begins not with intent, but unchecked escalation from U.S. moves. Tactical nuclear strikes in Ukraine devastate Kharkiv, prompting NATO's full invocation of Article 5. U.S. leads airstrikes on Russian Black Sea Fleet, sinking carriers. Putin retaliates with hypersonic missiles on Polish bases, killing U.S. troops. Europe mobilizes, while China condemns U.S. aggression, activating mutual defense pacts with Russia. The war expands beyond Europe. U.S. arms surge to Taiwan amid Chinese blockade drills. A U.S. sub collides with PLA Navy vessel in the strait, sinking it. Trump orders strikes on Chinese mainland ports. Beijing invades Taiwan beaches, drawing Japan and Australia in. North Korea launches missiles at U.S. bases in Guam, escalating to a two-theater nuclear risk. After U.S. capture of Maduro, Venezuelan remnants ally with Russia, launching guerrilla attacks on U.S. forces. Trump annexes oil fields, prompting Chinese intervention via proxies. Russian subs sink U.S. ships in Caribbean. Brazil sides with BRICS invading Guyana. Hemispheric war, links to global fronts. U.S. pressures Denmark for Greenland control, deploying troops amid mineral rush. Russia views it as encirclement, sending bombers over Thule Air Base. A skirmish downs U.S. jets. NATO fractures as Denmark protests. China claims Arctic routes, leading to naval battles and melting ice, globalizing resource wars. North Korea's missile tests provoke U.S. preemptive strikes on Yongbyon. Kim retaliates, shelling Seoul. South Korea invokes U.S. alliance. Russian aid flows to Pyongyang, while China blockades U.S. allies. Tactical nukes detonate on DMZ, merging Asian fronts into a unified Axis versus Allies struggle. U.S. cyberops cripple Russian grids. Moscow hacks U.S. satellites, blinding military. Space debris from ASAT tests disrupts GPS worldwide. China dominates low Earth orbit, targeting U.S. carriers. Economic collapse follows as nukes loom over cities. America's initial escalations birthed a multipolar apocalypse.